There we are. I think we're live.
Yes, we are.
Hi, everybody. How are you?
Hi.
Well, here we are. Welcome, everybody. High Vibes Up on Wednesday, 31st of May. Where did the month go?
Right?
Yes, yeah. So welcome. It's going to be a great show. We have a special guest with us, Elias ML. Welcome. We thank you for joining us today. I know our call was cut short last time due to the internet issues, but
the storm, the storm,
the
redneck internet.
The storm was upon ML.
Yep. We live in stormy, tumultuous times, right?
Yes, we are. We're going to obviously talk more about that today. And we're looking forward to that. Really, really delighted to have you. Pleasure. Such an honor. And we're excited for what you have to share with us in the next hour and a bit, whatever it takes. Let's get this show on the road. We're just waiting for people to jump on. I think we've got some people. Arlene's just jumping on. Diane, she's there messaging. That's great. So
got to say hi to everybody.
Let's say hi to everybody. I just wanted to...
Hi, everybody.
We want to remind everyone of Kid and Candy's ASEA account and how to go ahead and contribute to kids' services.
Yeah. I'll cover a few of the things, if I may, before we head off to a different level. ML, if that's okay with you.
A little bit of housekeeping.
Yeah. So we have a promo, first of all, which finishes today.
I got it, and my parents got it.
Style Performance Pack. If you buy 3 of these, you get one free. It's about a $50 value.
Yep.
It's great because one's for mind, mood, and energy. When you combine those together, you've got a whole burst of everything happening within you. And it's awesome because we all need to hydrate each and every day more and more. It's not just for the summer times. I think water is essential for our well-being. And if you can't drink the water on its own, then just add some flavor to it, add some energy. It's got redox molecules in that, in the granules. So it's awesome to kind of add that nutrition to your body. So what else is there? We have our ASEA as well, which is great, obviously, for everyday usage to enhance our well-being, our health. We are still receiving donations for kids' treatments. We're also grateful for everything that everybody has been contributing to, and we welcome more of that to support him on his journey of wellness. And thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
And super. I think that's it. The promo ends today for those who want to take advantage of that. That's awesome. So we'll get this show on the road. I don't think I've missed anything else. Have I, Diane? I think I covered everything.
Think you covered it all. Yeah, awesome. Let's make sure that we hit it again at the end, just for the people that come on late. And
we'll cover that again.
Yeah, and Elias, what would you like to talk about today?
Well, I think before we get started, we should probably, blow the shofar.
Yes.
Set the tone, right? Because this is a symbolic, divinely instrument. So I'll blow it here, and then we'll get the show rolling, shall we?
Absolutely.
There you go.
Awesome. It kind of hits a note where the microphone doesn't like to pick it up, but we heard at the very beginning.
It's the frequency, it's a frequency instrument. And when you blow the shofar, it resonates with the frequency within, and it actually elevates the frequency within us itself. And there's a reason why in the Old Testament time, they utilized the shofar around the walls of Jericho to take down the walls of Jericho for a reason. It's a divinely instrument given to us by the heavenlies. It's very powerful. it's prophesied that in the last days we'll hear the trumpets, right? That everybody will hear the trumpets. Well, that's what we're going to probably be hearing across the world, is the sounds of the shofars being trumpeted throughout the world. It's really interesting. I live here in the Ozarks, in the very rural part of the Ozarks. And when I blow the shofar, you can actually hear it for miles. It reverberates and it resonates throughout the forest area where we live at for like miles. It's actually very powerful. And it's really interesting because you'll have all the animals in the wilderness, doing their thing at night. You can hear everything. And then once I blow that, it's calm. They're like, stop. They're like, oh, wow, this is like very peaceful. So it's very powerful.
Do we know what frequency in hertz it actually resonates on? Because I know 432 is very powerful. Have you measured the frequency of the sound?
I don't know what the frequency of the sound is, because it depends. You can adjust the frequency of the sound depending on the pitch and how much power you're blowing into it, or you're reverberating through your lips. It's a lot like blowing, a trumpet or something like that. It's not so much how much force you're blowing into it, it's how much you reverberate the power within your lips. And you're really trying to squeeze a maximum amount of air through a very small opening itself.
I think I might need one of those. I have a one of the Hawaiian, I don't think it's a conch shell, but the big shell that they would, it's massive shell.
Yeah, those are awesome.
I can actually get a tune out of that. I can blow that loud enough to make it happen.
From the days of Lemuria, right? The conch shells from the days of Lemuria.
Yeah. The roads in Belize, all of the little islands they call keys, all of the roads are made out of crushed conch shell.
Oh, wow.
It's
very
insane.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's very fascinating. Very fascinating.
Where are we going to be hearing these horns from? Are they just going to start somewhere? And they're just going to...
in the sky. We'll start hearing them throughout the sky itself. Everybody here on the plane of existence will start hearing these things. Well, I can't say everybody, those people that are asleep, they probably won't be hearing it. I mean, they're not hearing the truths that are being resonated and trumpeted right now. So maybe they won't be hearing it. Those that are awoke, I don't want to use that word woke. Those that are awakened are going to be able to hear it. I'm pretty confident.
Wow.
That's awesome. That's very exciting, because I think as the frequencies are rising each and every day, we're feeling the power of those elements being shook up within us. And I think I had a question for you, if I may present that. And maybe you can shine your spiritual perspective on it for me. That would be awesome.
Okay.
If we are here as part of the one God in the smaller pockets of gods, having this perspective on all levels, because if God's source is flowing through us to have this experience here in this 3D, and we're part of the oneness, then everything that we observe, everything that we see is also within us. Mm-hmm. How we come together to heal that in a loving space, how we come together powerfully is what's going to heal what's happening around us. What are your thoughts on that?
That is a perfect segue. Awesome. That's a perfect segue. Because it comes down to the Kryst. All right. So I've wanted to talk about the Kryst. I mean, I talk about Kryst extensively on my platforms quite a bit in different contexts. But I wanted to break the Kryst down as a frequency, because that's what is connecting us all. All right. Again, as I said last time, we are beings of light. We're absolute divine beings of light. We're in the beginning. The Elohim said, let there be light. Let us, plural, make man in our, plural, own image, right? So what is that image? Well, they made humans. We are literally angelics. I did a chat earlier in the week where I talked about how as humans we became these fallen angelic humans. And it wasn't so much because of something we did, it's because of what happened here in our plane of existence over time, where at this point where we're at, you and I, we're all created in a 12-strand DNA construct. Well, each one of those strands is reminiscent of the 12 dimensions within our time matrix. It's also reminiscent of many different things. 12 is such a powerful symbolic number in the cosmos. It really is. And so as humans, human, that word human has 2 syllables. Hu, it means light bearer, right? And then you have the second syllable, man, to manifest. We manifest light, which is frequency. But what light are we manifesting? Well, we manifest the light of Christ within all of us. And it's not the Messiah, Savior, shall we say, that we've been indoctrinated through our religion organizations. It's much grander than that. It's greater than that. What I'm going to do tonight is talk and teach about the Christ in a way that will hopefully help people understand that in religion has done a great disservice when it comes to the word Christ and the meaning of the Christ itself. So the Christ, and when I refer to the Christ, I spell Christ K-R-Y-S-T, not C-H-R-I-S-T. C-H-R-I-S-T is how religion spells Christ. But the actual way that the cosmos spells Christ is K-R-Y-S-T. And we'll get into that in just a little bit of why. It's actually an acronym. It's an acronym because Christ isn't a name. It's a title. It's a station. It's a purpose, right? So the Christ is a cosmic force. It's it's energy. It's intelligence that radiates in everything, right? And in any religion, no matter what the name, no matter the country or the tradition, if you will, the primary concern of that religion is Christ. Even if the religion doesn't use the word Christ, it's predicated around Christ, the teachings of Christ. The law of one is a primary example. The law of one is the epitome of the spirit of Christ, the light of Christ, the Christ consciousness, right? So the word Christ is derived actually from a Greek term called Christos, or Christos, if you will. The word Christ, as I said, is a title. It's a cosmic force. It's energy. It's radiation. It's vibration. It's sound. And it's frequency. Ancient scriptures state that in the beginning, God sounded. God sounded, right? Yep. So if you study the creation mythologies of any religion, you're always going to find that in the very first instances, in the very first moments, what emerged was vibration, energy, a force, light, a sound. That is Christ. The 7 tones of the original creation are broken down into Ka, Ra, Ya, Sa, Ta, Ah, La, which is an acronym for Christal or Krystal. So when the tones of Ka, Ra, Ya, Sa, Ta, La are woven into this complete, it actually explains the male and female are merged. It's the risen Christos body is what this means, okay? That force is beyond any name. It's beyond any concept. It's beyond any thought. And it's beyond any title. And it's beyond any belief. It's something that's incomprehensible. It's immeasurable. And it's eternal. It's so powerful. So everything that we are, everything that we experience, everything that we can ever imagine or even perceive is merely a derivative of Christ. This is how all-encompassing and overpowering this energy is. And it's absolutely everything. Everything in existence is merely a derivative of Christ. So when we talk about Christ, We're not talking about a man. We're not even talking about a God. We're actually talking about a force, a cosmic ray, a living, vibrating, resounding energy. And there are many names for this energy that actually emerges from nothingness. In the Kabbalah, it's actually called Oin Sofar, which in Western traditions, it means the ray of creation, right? That's what that means. The ancient Native Americans, their first tribal nations, because they don't like to be called Native Americans. They actually prefer to be called First Nations people, because they are First Nations. They are the root race, right? The Aztecs, the Mayas, they had many names for this ray of light, but the most famous one they used was Quetzalcoatl. Quetzalcoatl was the one that they always utilized. Christians utilize Yeshua or Jesus Christ or the Son, S-O-N. As a matter of fact, the other day, I was sharing a special message with my group at Ascension Academia talking about the Christos sun dragon spirit. And it's very powerful, indeed. And that's another topic we can get into at another time itself, but it's very powerful itself. So in the East, there's 1,000 names for this energy. You have Krishna, Vishnu, Osiris, Ahura Mazda, or Fu Shi, if you will, right? So all these names, they refer to the same primordial energy, which is actually at the very heart and soul and its purpose and meaning of religion. So this is very important to understand, because we have we've inherited from different cultures and traditions these concepts, these mistaken concepts about religion. And it's about Christ. It's not about religion itself, right? So that's why I wanted to talk about this tonight, because we're in this timeline wars, but we're in frequency wars that are taking place right now. It's about the restoration. Everything is being restored right now. And those that are awake will see, and those that are not, they will not. We have prophecies being fulfilled. We call them prophecies. We have timelines being fulfilled, events within timelines being fulfilled that have been prophesied for the ages. Some people call it the last days. It's not the last days. It's the last days of the darkness, but it's the beginning of the light. So it's not really the last days, actually, right? So people nowadays, they have these, well, people nowadays, they have this limited, they have this term that they use in Christ, I guess is the best way to say it, and it's wrong how they use this term Christ, all right? They have limited Christ to a mere God, and this is so wrong. So they've limited this term Christ to like one religion, and that's wrong as well, because Christ is not a religion. When the Christ came, and there were multiple Christs that came here, it wasn't just one, but we only have one narrative, right? But when the Christ came, the Christ didn't come to establish a religion. Nowhere in the Bible did Christ say, hey, build an organization after my name and have a bunch of people follow me because I'm the end all be all. He actually always said, follow my Father. He always said, follow my Father. He didn't say, follow me. He said, follow my Father. I'm here on my Father's behalf. I'm here at my Father's will, not my own, right? So religions are born, they grow, they sustain, and they die. Religions belong to time. That's what happens. Civilizations belong to time. They belong to a particular place and a particular time. That is, religions have a narrow focus of a particular psychology, if you will, all right? When you start really researching the different religions out there and where they came forth and sprung forth from and who was behind the concept of certain concepts of different religions, you really find they're all bound together. They all came from their original starting point itself, and again, it didn't come from a Christ itself. It came from man. This is where you get that term, the philosophies of men being mingled with scripture, right? So that's where the confusion comes into play a lot of times. So they all come from this one universal primordial religion, if you will, which is this cosmic, eternal, and it's a worship science of Christ, if you will. See, the Christ is revered throughout the cosmos. And I'm not referring to a modern system or a modern belief, if you will, but to this ultimate primordial science, which is beyond anything that we can actually conceive of, anything that we can write or even put into a book, to try and minimalize Christ into a book.
Right.
No, you can't do that. You can't do that. Christ is beyond all of that. Christ is beyond all of that, right? So from the guardian perspective, and this is the perspective I present things from the guardian. And when I'm talking about the guardian, I'm talking about those of us that know that what our divine origins are, that whether we're light workers that come from a starseed, or we're indigos, or we come from a divine guardian standpoint, such as an angelic, if you will, Melchizedek. That's what I am. I'm Melchizedek. I come from the Melchizedekian line. Excuse me. So we have these certain knowledges, but it's this guardian perspective, as we call it. The personal Christ is defined as this entirety of the personal Christos of identities that's reunited throughout this what is known as this 12 planetary time cycles in the triune of universes, if you will, all right? Because that's what we have here amongst us itself, okay? So the term Christ or Christos, because that's how it's utilized throughout the cosmos, is the Christos, not just the Christ, but the Christos itself. It's used in this context, and it's not denoting that this individual being referred to as Jesus Christ, as taught through the world religions, if you will. Christos extends way beyond all meaning associated with this planetary consciousness, and it actually describes the state of eternal cosmic consciousness. And it's this title that's given to a free cosmic sovereign citizen. That's what we are, our cosmic sovereign citizens. And so when the Christ came, they came here to teach us about our sovereignty.
Right.
So has nothing to do with a piece of paper, has nothing to do with doing a bunch of external actions, if you will. It's an eternal. We were born with it. We were created with it. When our souls were conceived by God's source, the prime creator, we were divine, sovereign beings of light. And somehow we lost some of that knowledge. Somehow we lost some of that light a little bit along the way. It became diminished over time, but that's why we're doing what we're doing now, is to help restore that light, right? We're here to try and help reactivate the light in and of itself. Probably one of the greatest scripture passages, if you will, is when the Christ was amongst their followers, and the Christ was teaching the followers how to activate these other strands of their DNA so that they could do these miracles. We call them miracles, but they're not miracles to the Christ. They're just matter of fact. That's how we do it. So the Christ, through frequency, was able to what? Able to communicate telepathy-wise. The Christ were able to resurrect. The Christ were able to heal, restore, all these things. That's what the Christ was teaching us, right? Is how to do these things. So, but the Christ said something very powerful before the Christ ascended. The Christ said, "Greater things ye shall do than I have done myself." How powerful is that? To me, that is the most powerful phrase in all the scriptures. Greater things ye shall do than I have done myself.
That has hung with me my whole life since I was a little kid. It's like that just resonates so much with me. And when you were speaking earlier, I literally got a thumping in my chest. And it wasn't like no, I'm not having a heart attack. But it was that, that other thing that you get when you hear the truth, you get the goosebumps.
Yeah.
But this was a soul truth. And that's when I get the thumping.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, I just went, okay, I want to feel this as much as I can. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I apologize for interrupting.
Oh, you're fine. So the word Christ has been distorted, right?
Yeah.
In its use on earth, on this earth plane intentionally, from being integrated into our secret societies and to these violent, not violent, but violent religions that have been manufactured by the NAA. That's the negative alien agenda, if you will. And when I'm talking about negative alien agenda, I'm talking about the fallen angels, divine ones.
Yep.
People have a hard time accepting the fact that the angels are aliens, but they are the very first negative aliens, negative alien agendas, as the fallen angelics, because they are alien. They're alien to this plane of existence. They weren't created to be put here. We were.
Yes.
They came here to try and manipulate us. So they're the first aliens that we've had these experiences with, this ongoing battles with, right? But they did this. They used this word Christ and they distorted it to create harm amongst the human race, to manipulate us, to manipulate our thinking. Because what's going on right now in our movement, this truther movement right now, let's get back to what you were just saying, Diane. Truth, right? So I have people ask me all the time, and I'm sure you ladies do too, why haven't we had more people wake up? Why haven't we not, with everything that's happened, especially over the last 3 years, and all the information that's come forward in the last 3 years outside of but all the different horrific things, why haven't more people woke up?
I'm
truth. It's all because of truth. Because what you said, Diane, is when you and I presented truth, your soul vibrates, it resonates, because truth stands on its own merit, right?
Spin it again. Yeah.
Truth comes from God.
Yes.
Truth you don't have to provide evidences of. Truth you don't have to back up. It stands on its own merits because it's light. It's of Christ. But if you're telling people half-truths, or you're completely just lying to people because you're a disinformation operative, you're not going to have that effect on those people, and they're going to stay asleep. Thus, that's why the majority of our brothers and sisters have not awakened to where we're at right now. That's why people are still asleep to the fact that what's happening to our human race and the things that are taking place right now, they're not getting it. They're not getting it because how can you wake somebody up if you're giving them not even half truths, just you're flat out lying? And that's what's been going on in this movement, this truther movement for too long. But we're starting to see some growth. We're starting to see some individuals coming forward that are providing and validating and presenting additional truths itself. They don't, this is just where we're at. We're making this transition. We can call it the sifting of the wheats from the tares, if you want. That's a great metaphor that we can use. But that's really what's taking place right now. So we endeavor to use this word Christ. We can also use the Christos Sophia, Christal, or the Christalla. We use these interchangeably to return the real meaning and the use of these words to denote the consciousness principles of the law of one, the cosmic structure of creation as they are intended by our eternal God source, the infinite prime creator of all. So during the ascension process, we undergo the process of reintegration and uniting all of our identities throughout these simultaneous time cycles, if you will, okay? And these collective identities are connected to the Godhead that's referred to as our personal Christ. You see, in our movement right now, another reason why people have not awakened is because they're waiting to be saved.
Right.
Right? We're waiting for a political savior to come save us. We're waiting for a military savior to come help us. We're waiting for a financial savior to give us our money that's owed to us.
And we have those people that, you know, I know some of them and I love them dearly, that it's just like, you know, kind of don't bother me with all this. When it gets to, you know, crunch time, then inform me. And it's like, yeah, I'm not, you know, am I going to call everybody up and go, okay, so this is the time? You know what I mean? It's like they need to have an operation of interest in truth itself. And that has been one of my key things my entire life, is get to the truth. What's the truth?
Well, truth is never an easy pill to swallow, because what happens when we decide to accept truth, then it invokes action, because then we have to do something with the truth. We just can't sit there with it and just do nothing. We now have to do something with that truth. We become responsible in that truth, right?
Right.
People are burnt out. People are checked out. People are done. They're fried. I mean, I get hit up every single day with people who are beside themselves. I have good days. I have bad days, just like everybody else does, because you know what? We're all feeling the changes that are happening, right? We're all feeling the changes, you know, at a conscious level and at a vibration level. I exist within the fourth and fifth dimension, but my body hasn't caught up to that yet. Sorry, it just hasn't. It's the last thing to happen. And because of that, I'm still being sucked into that 3D all the time. Everybody wants to keep sucking you back into that 3D world all the time. And I don't want to get there anywhere because it doesn't feel comfortable.
Traveling in those, like, you know, the third and fourth density. I heard we were going into the fourth positive, and then once there, then the fifth. Some are going to move faster than others. You know, I understand, you know, I understand how everybody's at their own level. So we are traveling in between different densities. Do we call it realities? Do we call it timelines?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why, you know, that's why, like, some of the things that are happening around us, I don't get caught up in it. I don't get emotionally drawn into it. You know, Jasar and Asar, the RV stuff. If it happens, great. If it doesn't, I really don't care, because I don't plan on participating in that to the degree that other people are. I am a global ambassador with a great organization called Quantum Healing Systems, and they are leading the world when it comes to a humanitarian initiative right now, right? And they're not doing it with the funds of an RV. They're bootstrapping. They're bootstrapping this amazing initiative that maybe someday, if the RV does come into focus, it will help. It'll help extensively, but we're not waiting for that. And you see, a lot of people are waiting. They're waiting on the sidelines. They're waiting for something to happen that may not happen. It may not even come out the way they think it is. You know, I always ask people, divine ones, I'm like, how do you know at the end of the day which version we're going to end up with? Are we going to end up with the deep state, or are we going to end up with the white hat version? Which one? We won't know until it happens, right? So we have to live life accordingly and prepare accordingly. And this is what we talked about earlier, is preparation, preparation, preparation. We need to prepare. We have some hiccups ahead of us. We have some hiccups. Whether people want to accept it or not, it is what it is. We have hiccups ahead of us.
How would we go about and prepare for that sort of thing? The hiccups. What are you seeing?
Well, let's finish the Kryst thing. Then we'll jump into that, shall we? Okay. Yeah. Because everybody prepares in different ways, shall we say. There's not a clear cut, you know, because not everybody has the same abilities to prepare, shall we say. Not everybody's emotionally there to prepare, because when you go down that path of preparedness, right, it's an emotional check, because you really have to accept the fact that I'm preparing for myself and for my family. Something major is about ready to happen. And that's not an easy thing to swallow either, because then you have to accept the fact that, we don't have sunshine, lollipop, and unicorn farts around us yet. It's just not the world we're living in right now.
Yeah, you're just waiting for it to pop off.
Yeah, exactly. So in every atom of our bodies, there's this fire of life, and that's Christ, right? The energy that gives us this capacity to think is Christ. The energy that flows in our emotions is Christ. The energy that gives us this power to see, to feel, to think, to receive, to experience, it's Christ. The energy in the sun, the energy that spins the earth, shall we say, all right? Depending on what your philosophy is when it comes to the earth, right, this plane of existence, the energy that forms a butterfly, or the energy that allows clouds to float in the sky, this is all Christ. It's all Christ. So when you think of Christ, we can't limit our thoughts to one man who lived 2,000 years ago. We can't limit our thought to like a statue or a scripture, or a quote, or a concept, or even an idea of what Christ is. We can't do that to ourselves. I've said for however long I've been doing this influencer stuff, we have Christ amongst us, unbeknownst to us, all the time. Yep. All the time. And nowhere in the scriptures, and I am a good student of the scriptures. I'm not touting that. I'm just saying I've studied the scriptures. I've done it. I've read the Aramaic, Greek, and Hebrew. So I've done enough studies to see that when the Christ were amongst us, the Christ didn't say, hey, I'm coming back in 2,000 years' time. Where did that timeline come from? Man put that timeline out there. Well, I'm sorry, but guess what? They added 1,000 years to our timeline of humanity already. So we're already off in that regards. So if you're waiting for Christ to come back in 2,000 years, you got another 1,000 years to wait. But guess what? That Christ already came and went. That Christ already returned and went. And so the millennial reign of that Christ had already taken place. That's where we have the great Tartarian civilization, who were the remnants of that. Who they were the embodiment of the Christ collective, if you will. So instead, we need to open our eyes, we need to look around, and we need to look within ourselves, right? That's where we're going to find Christ, is within. The inner Christos is this personal divine blueprint of the eternal God source, consciousness. And this is energy from which all things manifest and are made into being. Okay. Christ is in your breath. Christ is pumping in your heart. It's in the sensations that we reach in all of our senses in every moment. There's this transformation of energy that's happening right now, and that is Christ. The true aspirant, the true practitioner does not think of Christ as an idea or a concept. It's or something that's limited into their minds, right? The true devotee of Christ looks for Christ in every instance, in every face, in every eye, in every word, and in every image, in every animal, in every planet. The true devotee of Christ is always seeking to perceive and witness that energy into action in the universe right now. That's how you find Christ right now. Right. In our breath, through your eyes, through your ears, through your touch, through your taste, through your smell. Christ is there in everything without limitations. Everything that exists is a modification of Christ, and everything vibrates with that energy. Everything. That's why I can say there are Christ amongst us everywhere, because there are.
Mm-hmm.
Just like we have angelics amongst us everywhere, because there are. We have ascended masters amongst us. They're everywhere. They are. We have Elohim amongst us. They're here. So it's so powerful when you think about that, right?
It is. Reminds me of that one book. For some reason, I can't remember the name, and I have two of them, that Marianne Williamson always spoke of. The beauty that I see is the beauty in me. That was one of my hardest lessons. All the beauty, everything that I see today I find beautiful is the beauty that I find in myself.
Mm-hmm.
I did that lesson quite a few times.
Wow.
Because it was like, okay, I didn't get past this one. There's a lesson every day. What is the name of that book? I'll think of it.
In February 2012, that's when my world changed, you see, because I came from a religious background. I was a Mormon. I was born and raised in the Mormon church. I was being groomed to what I call the corporate priesthood ladder. I was being groomed because my family bloodline, those roots ran deep into the Mormon church to the founding days. I was being groomed to take leadership positions. And when you start aspiring to climb the corporate priesthood ladder within the Mormon church, you're also climbing the brotherhood ladder that parallels with it as well.
Yep.
That's the way it goes.
1 foot here and 1 foot there.
That's right. Mm-hmm. So in February of 2012, when I had a one-on-one encounter with the Kryst, that profoundly opened me up to everything, because the Kryst showed to me from beginning to end our origins, the truth of everything. And I'm telling you, it was overwhelming, of course, but the fact remains, it was a massive shift in my consciousness, because everything I thought I knew up to that point, I realized I didn't know jack shit. I didn't know anything. And a lot of what I thought I knew was lies perpetuated by man. Again, the philosophies of men mingled with scripture.
Yep.
But that's when I also knew who I was. That's when I knew what my divine appointment was, my purpose, my calling, and what I was supposed to do, because I was given a commission at that point forward to do the things that I needed to do itself. So, I've had to sit on a lot of knowledge and a lot of information that I just couldn't openly share because we weren't ready for certain things. Now, more and more people are being ready and are prepared to hear certain truths now than they were a few years ago. So, we've had to go through some trials to get to this juncture. So it's profound. It's so profound, and again, I'm telling you, it's just when I think about that time, and I don't even know how long I was in the presence of the Kryst. It seemed like it was a very long time, but it's probably only a few moments. I'm not sure at all. But just to be able to see what truly happened when the Kryst was amongst us at that time period, a lot of the storylines and narratives given to us as written in the Bible, translated, transcribed in the Bible, so far removed from the truth, it's unreal. So far removed from the truth, it's unreal. There were three Kryst were amongst us in a time period within just a few years, within 3 or 4 year time period. There were three Kryst amongst us. Most people, especially Christians, they have a hard time accepting the fact that the Kryst spent a lot of time in the Middle East and in China. The Kryst spent a lot of time in South America and in the Isles of the Sea and over in Europe. They just didn't stay in Palestine.
India,
exactly. Other sheep I have of this fold, ye know not.
It's
And it's all
incredible.
part of ascension. Whoops, there we go.
Yeah.
It's all part of ascension. It's all part of our ascension, preparing ourselves for ascension, because that's what the Christ did. The Christ ascended.
That is
Nice.
so beautiful.
Yeah,
Go
thank
ahead,
you.
Sarah.
When you were being conditioned from a young age, ML,
Mhm.
how did you, obviously it came to a point in your life when you started seeing more of the light, connecting to more of what the truth is and not the conditioning, limited belief systems that we're conditioned to believe to limit ourselves. Was it something very hard for you to kind of come out of, or was it easy transition more so into the spiritual world from the religious elements that were being taught? The reason I ask that, many people will find it very difficult to kind of, if I let go of this and what I know, what I've been taught all these years, what do I have to hold on to? So
Right.
they feel lost. Are they stepping into the unknown that they're not aware of, because there's many different versions out there? So from that element is like, what guidance can you offer people in respects to what steps they can take to really connect with their inner light that connects them to the rest of the bigger light that we're all part of? What transition may be a little bit easier for them from your experiences?
Yeah, well, you're right. You know, when you grow up in a religious organization, especially one that's a cult, I hate to say it, but it is what it is. It's a cult. It's part of your culture. It's part of your identity, which is what you're talking about, right? It's part of your identity. And so when you give up part of yourself, your identity, you become a little lost. You become a little fractured, so to speak. My instance was probably a little bit different than a lot of people, because you see, when I left the Mormon church, I went through what they call a court of love, because my ecclesiastical leaders of the Mormon church, they called me into a court because they tried me on the grounds of apostasy. I was tried for being an apostate. Because in the Mormon church, you're labeled an apostate if your ecclesiastical leader says, don't talk about that, and you talk about it, then now you're an apostate. It's so warped. So I went through my court of love, and the decision to excommunicate me from the church had already been done before I even went into that court with my peers, right? It had already been done. The decision had been made. They were going to put me out there and use me as an example. And I was told, if you denounce your experience with the Christ and don't talk of it anymore, this goes away. How am I going to do that? How am I going to reconcile the fact and deny that I had an experience with the Christ, knowing that my eternal exaltation could hinge and depend on something like that? I don't think so. So it was easy for me in the sense, because they'd already made that choice for me, so to speak. And so it was tough afterwards, because, again, part of me identified in the culture enmeshed within that religious organization a lot. You know, business contacts, families, friends. I mean, you lose all that, because once people hear, oh, you got booted out of the church because you were an apostate, they don't care to find out what the real reason was, what it was over. They just hear that term that you were an apostate, and that means you have the scarlet letter on you, and now you're rejected. And that's what a lot of people go through, and that's what a lot of people face. It is, you know, that ridicule and judgment, unrighteous indignation, judgment. Isn't that interesting? Christians tout, we're supposed to love you, Christ, like Christ. Christ is unconditionally love. But except if you do or say something against the narrative, they're the first ones to judge you and kick you to the curb every single time.
And that's what causes trauma and
Yes.
breaking down of who we are, literally, when you're disowned, whether it's from a family or from any organization, institution. It's the disownment, it's the judgment, it's the harshness that really kind of shakes us and wakes us to the next level, I believe, if you really want to tap into your real truth then at that point and say, okay, maybe this is a blessing in disguise. It's an opportunity for me to find myself and find my footing again, find my way out of this. So everything happens for a reason. As long as you can kind of say, okay, rather than drowning in this, I need to find my strength. And then you connect to your true self and say, let's go, man. Let's find our footing. Go. Yes.
Yep.
Bingo. Spot on, beloved. Spot on. And that's why, I say, when COVID hit and the world was shut down and we all had to stay in our homes, we couldn't go to work and all this stuff. I think the greatest thing that happened to humanity during that time period is it allowed them that opportunity to discover their spirituality over religiosity. Because what happened was once the doors opened up and once we were able to go back to our churches and our places of worship, people are like, people started developing that spirit within and started realizing a lot of the lies, that you don't have to pay 10% of your tithing to be in good standing in your church anymore, right? You don't have to do certain things to be in good standing. You don't have to say things, wear certain clothes, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Right.
But the fact is, it gave people an opportunity to evaluate internally who they really are, that they are divine spiritual beings, not religious ones. And I think that's the greatest thing that came out of the whole COVID thing, if you will, was that opportunity for people to really discover who they are and what their purpose in life really is. And you're right, it is tough. It is tough. I've witnessed many people in many different faiths struggle with that because rejection, especially when you're rejected by your family and your loved ones or your children and so forth like that, it happens all the time. And those people feel like they have nothing to anchor to, So it's a gut check.
It certainly is. I think for the past few years, we've all had the gut check. It's like a kick in the teeth and the stomach at the same time.
It's a kick in the nuts.
I don't have those, but anyway, okay.
Oh, that's good. Hey, you know what? I have to say something here because you're going to love this. So I got to say this.
Yeah.
So tomorrow is June 1st, right?
Yeah.
What is the month of June? It's Pride Month.
Yeah.
It's Pride Month, right? All right. So my question is this. How do we devote a whole month to being woke? Where's the month of honoring the men and women of valor who served for us? We give them one day out of the freaking year, Memorial Day, to acknowledge their sacrifice. Where the hell's their month?
Exactly.
Where's the month for the men and women of valor who put everything on the line, that gave the ultimate sacrifice for our children, for our family, for our communities, and for our countries? Where's their month?
Damn right.
That pisses me off.
Me too.
Sorry, that's my soapbox, but it is what it is.
Yeah. No, I
you know what's interesting is when you put the word Pride Month together, they're two words. There's one word that comprises out of the middle. It's called demon. Did you guys know that? I actually put it on my main wall. When you put Pride Month together, the middle word in there is demon.
It is. Wow.
And I'm not being judgmental. I'm not judgmenting.
No,
I'm not putting judgment upon people with alternative lifestyles, because I have an understanding from Christ. This is really something we should talk about. Yeah. I have had lots of people, I've had this discussion on my channel quite a bit. People ask, how do we treat our sons and our daughters or people we love and cherish who are conflicted in their lifestyle choices, right? Because they feel like God made them that way. And I'm like, let me tell you something. When God created our souls were conceived. And at the time of the conception of our souls, we were determined to be the divine masculine spirit or the divine feminine spirit. We have a little bit of both in all of us, but we have more of one or the other. That's what comprises us, to be a male or female. So at the time of the conception of the eternities, it's called the law of eternal progression. Most people have never even heard of that term. The law of eternal progression. When you signed your soul contract, your soul was conceived. Either you're a divine masculine spirit at the beginning of conception or a divine feminine spirit at the beginning of conception. So depending on how many times you experience mortality as a male or a female, this is where some of the confusion comes in at. Because what happens is if you're a masculine spirit soul and you've experienced trauma as a female through certain lifetimes and you haven't healed from those traumas, you revert back to that. And that's why you're getting the conflicting emotions going on, and vice versa. You have these women who are out there and think they're men, and they're all diked up and have the butched hair and everything else like that because they're conflicted. They think they're a dude and they're not. It's because there's past life traumas that have not been healed and taken care of to allow that natural flow of their divine masculine spirit or divine feminine spirit to have its proper place within them as they keep moving forward. This is what happens. It's the same concept that people who have addictions, all right? People always ask me about addictions, and I tell them addictions is really, we need to understand what addictions are. Addictions are really spiritual. Let's say you are a guy who's addicted to pornography, and you don't want to be. You're conflicted because you know it's wrong. You know it's wrong. You're on your laptop at 2:00 in the morning while your sweetheart and your children are asleep upstairs, and you don't want to look at this stuff. So you have this internal conflict and turmoil going on all the time.
Right.
Unbeknownst to you, in the astral plane, the fourth dimension, you have unclean spirits and entities constantly around you telling you, do it, do it, do it, do it. Why? Because if you're a being who has an addiction, drugs, alcohol, sex, pornography, whatever it is, and you die, you haven't overcome that addiction in the flesh, that addiction stays with you in the spirit world, and you want to get fulfilled. You need to fulfill and sustain that addiction. So what do? You search out somebody in your bloodline descendant that may have that addiction, and you're drawn to them, and then you coerce them to fulfill that addiction, because once they do it, you get fulfilled, and then you stay with them, and you're constantly badgering them. There's thousands of unclean spirits and entities in the astral plane around us all the time, and if we have a weakness of an addiction like that, they are bombarding us all the time. So if we don't know that, and we don't know how to sever and cut those spiritual cords and bindings and heal from that and do generational curses and healings and releases, this is where addictions come from. And this is why when people go to AA and they go through all these treatment centers and they keep relapsing over and over and over again, they don't know why. They don't want to. It's because they're being bombarded in the spirit world, and they don't know how to shield and protect themselves from that so they can heal from it. That's where addictions come from. That's where the confliction of our sexuality comes from.
That's huge.
That came from the Christ. That knowledge comes from the Christ.
No, that's some awareness that really needs to come forward in order to people to deal with the conflict that they feel within themselves, right? The confusion. And it's how do you deal with the confusion of I'm split energy in this body. I'm leaning more towards masculine than feminine in a female body, or a masculine body having more of the feminine energy in them. And it's learning through whether it's past life regression therapy or whether it's anything else and this is what I used to do a lot of.
Great.
Over years. Yeah. So it's learning how when we decide to come into the physical and we make a choice, we get to choose the family and the experience we want to have within that. Whether it's about relationships, whether it's about anything else in life that we want to experience and create here. So cleaning up is key. Healing, even now when the awareness is here in this life, you're hearing the messages for a reason, that because you've got to address something within you before you go to the next and take all this with you too. And
Yes.
so therefore, it's important to clean house when you're here. And people feel that, I've done my work, I'm okay. And that's the ego speaking again, because we're never done. There's layers and layers and layers of stuff that needs to be worked on because of the soul's journey over lifetimes, over and over and over again. And it's not just your journey, it's the ancestral journey. And it's the pass down of habits and old energies. It's the pass down of inheritance that we take on, whether it's in the mother's womb or anywhere else, whether it's the father or the mother trauma that we take on or any issues. We get to bear that and we get to live that. But we also have to wake up and say, okay, I need to heal from this. How do I do that? Who do I reach out to? There are many, many solutions, So I've done many, many sessions over the years with people to heal a lot of their past life energies that come forward as a pattern, because they're drawing more and more of that experience into their lives daily.
Beautiful. Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. That is beautiful, because you're right. You know what? There was a time some years ago, that's what I started discovering after I had my experience with the Kryst. I knew I needed to be fixed because I had things going on inside me, conflictions, and I didn't know why I had certain conflictions. I didn't know why I was making certain decisions over and over again, and repetitive, stupid mistakes and thinking errors over. And where the hell's this stuff coming from? Right? So I sat through healing sessions with some really amazing healers, and they showed me, what you're talking about, the womb, so powerful, so powerful. My father and my grandfather, my maternal grandfather, he hated me as a child, and I didn't know why. I mean, my grandfather despised me. He abused me as a child and took anger out on me. I had no idea why. And when I started doing my past life regression works, I found out my mother conceived me out of wedlock. And because of that, it altered my grandfather's perception, because it pissed him off, because her life had been changed, because the course that he wanted her to do had been changed. It forced her to marry my dad. My mom was forced to marry my dad by my grandfather, because my grandfather would probably have killed my dad if he didn't marry my mom. It was that way in those days, right? And because of that, I took on, as a baby, in my mother's womb, I took on all of that energy, all that hate, all that anger, all the fighting and argument that went on before I was birthed into the world. I took all that on into me itself, and even after the fact itself. So I had to learn to forgive and forgive and forgive and cut and sever those cords and bindings and forgive. I spent 3 days crying. I mean, the person that was helping me, she had to take a vacation for a week afterwards because I had so much baggage that, she had helped me clear out. So she had to reset herself. But it's amazing, because I didn't know, like with my father was an alcoholic, but he wasn't one of those dysfunctional alcoholics. He was actually a high functioning alcoholic. He had a very successful business. I never saw him drunk per se. I didn't see him do stupid stuff. But my father was an alcoholic because his dad and grandfather and great grandfather. So there was 5 generations of alcoholics before him. He didn't know any different because that's how he was raised. That's how he was thought, And so I had to learn to forgive him and go back 5 generations where that all began, and forgive all of them and sever and heal from that itself too, right? So I think if people are serious about healing, this isn't something you're just going to take to God and take to Jesus, if you will. And that's a whole nother topic, all right? You're not just going to take it there and get healed, because that's not how that works. That is not how that works. It's so much deeper than that. It is so much deeper than that. But all things are possible via Christ. All things are. Not Jesus. I'm not saying that. I said through the Christ. All things are possible. So, wow. We're getting in deep tonight, aren't we?
I had very similar growing up, but I actually came out and my legs were twisted from the twisted thoughts. And, I started addressing this. I graduated high school in 1980, And I started addressing this in 1979 because I knew it was a problem. And, back then you didn't have a whole lot of help, and you didn't, it was hard to find, and you were doing a lot of this shit on your own, and very few people understood what the hell you were going through. You've got so many people right now that can help you. Candi's got a calendar up. This is exactly right up her line. So she's booking appointments on her calendar right now for these exact type of things, assistance with this. So yeah, any assistance. I've had regressions, and whole entire downloads of being Jesus's brother, the guilt, all the stuff. All the crazy cool stuff that I got to experience.
Wow.
Yeah, we're gonna have to have a conversation about that.
Yeah.
Not here, but just have a nice little conversation about what I discovered, and it was fascinating. But yeah, it's a hard road, and it could go rather quickly. Don't think you're going to be beating it up for days and days and weeks and months and years. No. We've got way better tools right now.
Yes, I agree with
it.
And I think that's where the realization comes in for the inner work that needs to be done. And that's just the beginning. And we can't all do the work ourselves. As much as we try, we manage to do what we can on ourselves each and every day, whether it's through writing, whether it's through other ways of meditation, connecting. But then there's a residue, then there's more depth that rises like an onion that needs to be peeled away and worked on. So this is where we need to reach out to the professionals and say, okay, those that are really good can help me shift this, because then it will ease how you feel in the body. It will allow you to have more light within the body. It will free you from what is bugging you up here. It will allow you to be at peace with yourself. When you start being at peace, you start loving yourself. You cut out the noise, you stabilize yourself, and you begin to love everybody around you because it starts oozing out of you. And when you can ooze out with love and no judgment, because the judgment sits within ourselves first before it projects out. So judgment is the biggest destructive force that anybody can project on another. So this is where
we are our own worst enemies, because we judge ourselves harsher than most other people would judge us as well. Forgiveness is really, really hard amongst ourselves. It's easier to forgive somebody else than to forgive ourselves. Once people ask me, well, what do you do? How do you prepare yourself to have an audience with the Kryst or with the angelics, if you will? And I'm like, well, there's not like a formula or an ingredient that you do. I said, once you're in a place in your heart where forgiveness has taken place, so to speak, a deep forgiveness has taken place, but it's also a thing about our will, our agency, because that's the greatest gift given to us. It's what we come here with. It's what we leave here with, is our will, our ability to decide, choose, if you will, right? Once Kryst knows that your will is that you would be willing to live the law of one, to be one with the Kryst and the heavenlies and so forth like that, that's when the veil starts parting for you. That's when you start having more of these supernatural experiences, per se, because they know you're on the road to healing itself. You're not wrecked, you're not fractured, because yeah, they'll come to you. We can have interactions with divine appointments, even being fractured, but it's a lot easier when we're on that path of healing. It's a lot easier on that path of healing, because it comes down to faith. We talk about faith and belief. Well, you know what? If you're a fractured person and you're fractured up here and you're fractured here, then your spirit's fractured as well. It's a lot harder to believe that we actually have access to a heavenly realm, because I always say the heavens are open for business. They're waiting for us to do business with them. They really are. And once we're on this path of healing and they see that, they feel that, then they can come to us, because there's certain cosmic laws that they have to abide by too, right? They can't supersede our law of will. They can't. They won't. They won't violate their own laws. So we have to live a life accordingly and start a path accordingly that allows and invites them to come into our lives in that capacity.
So as you're working on these things and going through, some of the layers, and when you start to have a clearer communication or a better interaction, does some of that appear like in synchronicities? Seeing, synchronicities, or seeing, so you could at least visualize it, so you're like, okay, am I crazy? Did I just, see this, 15 times?
Well, okay. So previous to my experience with the Kryst, 3 years leading up to that, I had a series of interactions with Raphael, the Archangel. And I didn't know why, but I was being tutored, but I was being guided, I was being helped, but it was all in preparation for me to have this experience with the Kryst. And I didn't know that until that time happened. But even after my experience with the Kryst, I often have interactions with the angelics here amongst us all the time. My wife has witnessed many interactions of mine with the angelics, if you will. And it just happens in obscure places. I mean, I could be out on a backcountry road someplace and you got somebody out there of obscure places. But because I'm willing to engage, I'm willing to interact and not judge and poo-poo it, I tend to have more of these experiences itself. Angels, unbeknownst to us, we are entertaining, right? So it seems to me the more we're willing to engage, and our heart's desire is to do that rather than live in fear and be fearful of those type of engagements. Because what does religion teach us? Religion teaches us that angels are these powerful beings that are here to strike down, and they're here to hand out God's judgment on mankind and all these things like that, hellfire, brimstone stuff. Isn't it interesting when you look in the Bible? There's two different gods we're dealing with, the one in the Old Testament and one in the New Testament. One in the New Testament's all about love, right? The one in the Old Testament's about hellfire, brimstone, war, judgment. That's Yahweh. Yahweh in the Old Testament, wait till you find out who Yahweh is, right?
Yeah.
Anunnaki. Geez, come on. I'm not making light of it, divine ones. I'm telling you guys out in the audience, I'm not making fun of you or not. I'm just telling you that once you start having a level of this understanding and discernment, you shake your head going, how did I buy into certain things? Why did I believe this all the time? My gosh, because it doesn't make any sense, because it's not truth, right? And when truth is presented to you, your soul starts vibrating and humming at a higher frequency. You have this this sense of peace, internal peace that you've never had before. So, so it's really hard to put into words, but it's profound. It's so profound.
Beautiful. And just to kind of take all that into perspective and understand where we have journeyed from to come to the realization to where we are today, with so much awareness on every level that has been brought forward as we all rise together. And for those who are not ready, will also rise in their grand timing, divine timing, as I call it. And not just with that, but then again, let's look ahead for a moment. As you started saying, we don't know what is going to be presented and how much manipulation will be in that. So how we start to connect to in ourselves, how we really, truly, authentically show up to ourselves first, trusting our intuition, our guidance, our knowing, and our downloads and the guidance, whether it's from our divine angels all around us. It's how do you kind of follow that element of truth? And this is where we really need to kind of come together powerfully, collectively, to say, this is what real truth feels like. This is what real love, real home feels like. Because it takes out anything that is not of love and high vibration.
So true. You're spot on. Well, this is why I and some of my partners are starting this organization. Sorry. Here. Ascension Academia, because we're wanting to help people prepare, emotionally. It's not just a spiritual thing, emotionally, for all these things that we're going through, that we're going to be going through itself, because this is a major transition that is happening, a major transition, we'll call it on biblical proportions, right? The cosmos is watching everything that's happening here in awe, because we're the first to go with a planet, if you will, a world, and make that leap, that ascension leap, because most people don't know, when our Earth was created, we were originally constructed in harmonic universe number 2, which comprised of the dimensions 4, 5, and 6 already. So we were already higher, but we fell. When did we fall? Well, 26,000 some odd years ago, we fell. The Atlanteans. That's when we dropped down to harmonic universe 1 and into the 3rd dimension itself. So we're trying to get back up to where we were originally at. Again, it's called the law of eternal progression, because that's what we're supposed to be doing, is progressing, not in a bad way, but progressing as beings of light, of what we were intended to be, of what we were constructed to do, and why we're supposed to do the things that we're doing. So, that's why we're here together, helping each other do this, we're edifying each other, we're lifting each other up. Line upon line, precept upon precept is how we're doing this with each other itself. We are our brothers and our sisters' keepers, are we not?
Yes, we are.
We're part of the oneness.
Yeah. So you were also talking earlier about preparation, and I know part of this is the preparation. Is there anything else that you want to add to that? Because what we were just talking about is a huge preparation.
Well, you can prepare temporally, right? Which you should do, because on a temporal basis, if we prepare ourselves, it will sure help us out with our spiritual and our emotional wellness with what's about ready to hit us. Again, we got some things that we got to overcome together. And if you're not prepared on a temporal basis, you're not going to fare very well. I am a huge advocate for preparing, showing and teaching people how to prepare, food, water, there's lots of different things that we can put into place to help mitigate the level of pain and suffering that we are going to go through. We don't have to. That's the whole thing. We don't have to. And I have people tell me, well, I'm on a fixed income. How can I do this? Well, guess what? I know people who are on fixed incomes who put that as a priority over other things in their life. It's just making certain things priority first and foremost. So there's always a will and there's always a way to adequately prepare yourself and for your family, your homes, and things of that nature for the days that are ahead of us itself. Let's look at what's happening right now. In the next 2 weeks, there's a series of events. Heck, I got it right here. So in the next 2 weeks, between, let's see here, there's a military operation that's taking place. Sorry, I'm just reading this real quick because, okay. All right, so in the next 2 weeks, there's a military operation over in Europe that's taking place. And it's actually it's between June 12th through the 24th. So it's 2 weeks. It's called Air Defender 23, which means 2023. So Air Defender 23 is going to be the most extensive deployment exercise of air forces for NATO in the history of NATO. All right. They're going to have over 220 aircraft over there. We're shipping F-16 jets to Ukraine. Well, Ukraine doesn't have pilots that know how to pilot our F-16 aircrafts. So what's going to happen? There'll either be American pilots or British pilots that are going to be piloting those things from NATO, but not Ukrainians, because it takes a year at minimum to train somebody how to fly a basic F-16. But the F-16s that are being sent over there aren't just simple F-16 jets. These actually have nuclear armament on them. So you have to have special endorsements and training on how to fly certain F-16s and arm a nuclear missile, if you will. This is stuff that's not being told to the general public. The mainstream media is not going to tell us this stuff, but there's a reason why they're doing this, right? You know, they're trying to provocate a World War III situation and scenario at all cost, at all costs. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, you know, this is nothing to be taken lightly here. You know, with everything that's happening over here in the United States, we have a lot of problems here. And, you know, I've talked about this on my channel. How do you take down a superpower nation like America? What makes us a superpower nation? Well, it's our financial prowess and our military.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So our financial arm is very weak right now. Very weak. So how do you take out our military? Well, how about infecting our military to a point where 75% of their white blood cells get depleted, possibly, right? Where they have HIV. Now, a report just came out last week that the Pentagon reported that there's a 500% increase in HIV in our military. 500% increase of HIV in our military. Well, how the hell did that happen? Well, I'm going to tell you how. Well, I can, but I can't because the Nazis here on YouTube won't like it. So I'm not going to tell you how it happened, but it happened.
Yeah.
So if you take out a good percentage of our personnel, of our armed forces, well, at the same time, while our armed forces are being depleted and decimated, we have military-aged males being shipped into the United States in the cover of night from China and other countries. We've identified over 30 different nationalities coming into the United States. Then they disappear into the sleeper cells that are out there. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what the hell's going on.
No.
Right?
Is that part of the border crisis?
Yes, exactly. That's right. I've been reporting on this extensively on my channel for the last several months, especially showing video after video of these Chinese nationalists that are being shipped to the Panama because China owns the Panama Canal. That's a staging area where they literally have military installations at the Panama Canal. China does, the CCP. They're being staged there. They're being trained there. And then they're being shipped up through Mexico, and they're being brought right into the border on buses, right into Texas. We've seen so many videos.
They're being given citizenship on the other side in Mexico. Bingo,
because there's a provision. There's a provision. Here it is. Thank you, Mr. Deep State Biden administration. Here's the provision. If you are an individual who's seeking political asylum into the United States because you're a political refugee, because you're a homosexual or a cross-dresser, or you identify as a transvestite, you get moved to the front of the line, you bypass all the bullshit, and you get stamped, and here you go. So what they're doing is handing out dresses to all these Chinese and other people down in Panama, teaching them what they need to say and how they need to act so they can go to the front of the line and gain interest. You guys that are listening to this, you're saying, that guy's full of shit. Really? I have put so much information out there on my Telegram channel, as well as many others have on different social media platforms. It's a fact. It's an absolute fact. I had friends in the ATF and the FBI that contacted me way back in the beginning of December and said, ML, we are having to go around to all the gun shows in these border towns and cities because these nationalists, military-age men from China and these other places are buying high-round clips and whatever weapons they can buy, because you can buy a lot of guns and ammo and clips and not actually have to be a citizen and show it, because private people can sell whatever. And this is happening. And they're having to go around warning the promoters of these gun shows, this is happening. You know, Nino Rodriguez, all right, love him or hate him, Nino Rodriguez is on El Paso. It's right on the border. Right. There's video after video showing tens of thousands of illegals sleeping and encamping on the towns, on the sidewalks in El Paso.
And their elementary schools.
Yeah, that's right. Why do we have in New York City? We have hotels that have housed our homeless veterans. They get their asses booted out, and illegal aliens are put into these hotels. And these illegal aliens are given all the financial benefits, they're getting all the money, they're given everything that they need. And a lot of these illegals that are coming in have massive diseases, typhoid. I mean, you name it. They've got horrendous diseases that are coming in. They're not even being checked, not being checked at all. You know, we were told, 3 weeks ago in Texas, that they were going to place 12 or 1,400 soldiers, National Guardsmen, Texas National Guardsmen on the border. And they did. Abbott did that. Except they weren't there to prevent them from coming in. They were there to help them come in and help process them much quicker so they can come in faster. That's what happened.
Oh my God.
I'm being dead serious. But we actually have full-time military that has been deployed on the border, not National Guard, not reservists, but full-time, because there is a heightened level of a threat, a credible threat on our border right now. And so only a commander-in-chief, and it isn't Biden, and I'm not saying it's Trump either, I'm just saying a commander-in-chief can only position full-time active military on the border, and that has happened. They're there. There's many people on that border that are civilians that are reporting what they're seeing there, that we have full-time military there for a reason. We've been infiltrated for a reason. Yeah. We've been infiltrated for a reason. You know, anything is at play right now. And if you're not prepared, God help you. God help you. You know, you live in these big cities. Man,
so
you know.
Let's add something really quick to this that people don't quite understand or know anything about. I got my dog, a Catahoula cattle dog, down off the border in Arizona, right near the border. She would be 17 years old in October, okay? Or 18 years old in October. So 18 years ago, these ranches were having issues with people coming over the border and, you know, costing them sometimes hundreds of thousands, burning their fences. So now they're all metal, killing their cows. They couldn't leave their home because their home wouldn't be rated for clothes and stuff like that. They would take all the medication, all the tools, you know, anything that has to do with medical. They would take them. And so when they leave their house to come up to where I used to live in the White Mountains of Arizona, they had to have a caregiver there because their house would be literally raided. And she was telling me that the ranchers down there, she was in like 4 ranches deep, or it could have been 5 ranches deep. So there's these massive areas, right? Of just, you know, cows and, you know, land. And so they would see a whole bunch coming over and they would send a truck a flatbed, however many flatbeds, we're going to need 3 flatbeds. That rancher would drive him to the corner of his ranch. The other rancher would pick their asses up and drive them to the corner because they wouldn't go back over. And they knew who they were dealing with. And they were seeing people from, China, Asians, Saudis. You name whatever, whoever wanted to come over, that's where they were coming through. And I heard about this 18 years ago.
Yes, you're spot on, Diane.
Yeah.
So in a previous lifetime, I was a sheriff's deputy. I served in law enforcement. I served with federal task force as well. And at that time, we would get briefings, and we would actually get briefings coming in, hot briefings that actually be coming in from the feds, telling us, things at the border where they would find uniforms from these nationalists would be dumped off in the Rio Grande and stuff like that, large deposits of uniforms of these nationalists, and so forth, right? We've known for the longest time that at any given time, there are over 500,000 foreign nationalists under the auspice of the United Nations inside the United States, waiting, and they rotate in and out all the time. People ask me, well, how are the blue helmets going to come into the United States? If things got so bad in the United States and we become a kinetic situation and civil war may happen, and we have to call up the blue helmets from the United Nations, how would they come into the United States without us being able to see it? And I tell them, they're already here. I said, it's your police, it's your law enforcement, not your sheriff's department, but your law enforcement, your state police, your municipal police, your city police. They have mandates and charters with the United Nations already, so they get some of their funding. And so they have uniforms and they have armament already handed out, so they can trade one uniform for another uniform when told to do so. That is a fact. If you guys don't know that, you need to do your research, because that is an absolute fact. Sheriff's departments do not have any connections to the United Nations, but your municipalities do.
Yep.
We've seen that here over the last few years.
Oh, that's right. You're in Canada. That's right. So you can confirm that. That's right.
Yeah.
I know there's Chicoms. They have military bases right there above Seattle in the British Columbia area, Vancouver, British Columbia, right? Yeah. They have actually a military CCP installation right there.
Yes, they do. Yeah.
Wow.
So we're seeing that already. We saw it a couple of years ago too. We saw it last year and the year before, and with some of the protests as well. There's so much there. It's just, what will it take?
It's interesting. Like inside the United States, you have cities like that have a Chinatown, like in a New York or a San Francisco. They have their own police stations in our cities. They have their own policing. And if you're an American, guess what? They can do whatever they want to you if you're in Chinatown, even though Chinatown, but that's what people don't understand, is those Chinatowns are sovereign lands. It's called imminent domain to China, not the United States, because a lot of your municipalities have sold off lots of our property. They've sold off lots of pieces of our real estate and our natural resources to China. So people might be a little surprised how much property under imminent domain China really has inside the United States.
It's disgusting.
It is.
Yeah, it is, because we're seeing it everywhere. It's actually being posted on government websites as well. It's in plain sight. And
like the Chinese president, Xi Jinping, he warned the people of China, and this is a report, to brace for the worst case scenario to happen anytime soon between China and the USA. His warning follows a close encounter over the South China Sea between American spy planes and a Chinese fighter jet. That was yesterday. All right. That was yesterday. I mean, we have so many of these reports coming out so fast right now. Like Russia. All right. They're using at 5 p.m. today, numerous Russian military executive jets, which have a call sign TU-134A, are traveling from Moscow to huge government underground bunker facilities in the Ural Mountains near Mount Yamantau. It is not known which government officials are on those flights or even why they're heading to those underground bunkers. Moscow is 7 hours ahead of the US East Coast time. So there you go.
Is that one of the reasons for the sat phones?
All right. So information on the sat
Sorry.
phones. No, you're fine. The sat phones, the 50 sat phones that they gave to these individuals, these politicians, they're not just normal sat phones. All right. These are the new quantum phones as well. So they're very advanced, sophisticated technology that these individuals were given. And these individuals have been relocated to strategic relocation centers. Because think about this. Why 50? Well, if we're in a situation where we have to restore our republic, well, how many states do we have right now?
50.
There you go. So how many congressmen or representatives would it take from each state to reestablish and restore the republic? 50. So, it's like, okay, it's really interesting. What's that?
So then who are you kidding? What jackass? And it's like, they announced that these sat phones were available. I'm very familiar with those types of items. And they were available, and there were so many of them, and only 50 people took them. I heard that 50 were assigned.
Bingo. Because this is what I told my followers. I said, think about this. What politician would turn down a $4,000 or $5,000 technological phone like a sat phone? No.
None of them.
They would have all taken one if they were offered one. Trust me.
Damn right.
Because that's what they do. They're always getting handouts. They never turn down gifts like that. No, they were assigned to 50 individuals. COG, think about it. Continuity of government, right?
Yep.
I mean, quite possible. It's quite possible. What's also interesting is all of these institutions, like hospitals, jails, and prisons, they were told 3 weeks ago, casually at that time, that they should probably have enough food on hand to get them through a 10-day supply chain disruption. That was 3 weeks ago. Okay. Now they're being warned explicitly to make sure you have enough food to get through a 10-day supply chain shortage. This is coming from the government, who's telling these institutions, which they don't carry. Normally, they don't carry a 10-day supply of food at these institutions because that's a massive quantity of food. But they're telling them, mandating them to make sure you have this in place.
So they're going to get
institutions.
Go ahead.
Sorry, these like hospitals and other official institutions.
Jails.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Here's another thing that most people don't know. So generally in state constitutions, you have your laws and you have your bylaws and you have your sub-laws and you blah, blah, blah. So in many of the state's constitutions, there's provisions that state that in the event of a national emergency where we're invaded, if you will, or we're attacked, if you will, and our military is called up here and things of that nature, if you are an inmate in a prison, they have the authority to eliminate those individuals that would be considered threats. Let's put it that way. That's the nicest way of saying that. There are those things that are in place, without a doubt. And I'm telling you, we're all feeling that something is imminent. Something is imminent. Since 9/11, I think those of us that are awake can feel and that discernment within us. We can see things and feel things in a way that we didn't prior to 9/11 that now we are really honed into itself. All right. And, this bullshit where people have been saying for the last 3 or 4 years, just sit back, just eat your popcorn. It's all a movie. Just let things happen. Don't get involved. Just let the white hats do what the white hats are going to do, blah, blah, blah. I'm sorry, but I'm not going to do that.
No.
I'm not going to put my family into a situation, nor am I going to want to help put other people into a situation where they're compromised, where their freedoms could be compromised and eroded and stuff like that too, So something is imminent, without a doubt. And I'm not going to put a date or a timestamp. I'm just saying something is imminent. It's always good and it's always prudent to be prepared, no matter what it is. It's always good to be prepared in the event something should happen. It doesn't take much to interrupt us.
Yeah, this is the calm before the storm. I feel like every moment I get to just rest and be quiet, that I'm going to take it right now. That's just me personally. I'm not fear-mongering anyone. I just love everyone so much. I want everyone to be as prepared as possible. And wherever you're at,
Yeah.
I think
that's, yeah. Go ahead, dear.
Sorry. We have an obligation and responsibility for our children.
Yes.
Who are vulnerable, and the elders who are vulnerable. And I think all our High Vibes Up family and our listeners on different platforms, we all want to kind of say, look, it is our obligation if somebody who is not able to get this information out there so that they can be prepared. We're being in service on a different level here, on a spiritual level to each other. Reach out. If they can't go get some groceries, buy something. It doesn't take much. Rice, flour, water. That's, have something there that kind of has a backup plan. Just help out in some way, any little way. It really, really adds up and really helps.
Yeah. It does. I don't, I'm not like an affiliate with any companies, but like For Patriots, I order food storage from those guys, and they always have programs running where you can get a 3-month supply of food storage, and they actually finance it for you. If you can't pay for it up front, they charge you like $199 for the next 4 or 5 months for a 3-month supply. That's a really good deal. So if a person's in a situation where they can afford that, I would tell them that's a good alternative to do. If people are on government assistance and subsidies, I don't judge people because I don't know anybody's background. But if you have government subsidies like food stamps, allocate portions of those. You can really bolster up a good food storage program for you and your family using those funds. I've seen it. When I used to teach preparedness courses and classes, we had to help people that had those subsidies. That's how they got food for their family. And we would show them, and we would construct a program of what you can buy, and you could really buy. Now, granted, 15, 20 years ago, you could get a lot more than you can now. I can remember 15, 20 years ago, you spent $100 or $200, you had 2 or 3 baskets full of food. Now you got a full basket of food for $200. It's insane. But use those funds wisely, and you can prepare for you and your family in that regards. It's I hate to say this, but we're at a point where it's like critical, where it could be too late.
We're out of time.
Because for 3 years, almost 3 years, I have been saying this over and over and over and over again. And people think you're just fear mongering and so forth. And I think we're at the point where it's a little too late. If you don't have certain things in place right now, man, I don't know. You look at the finance that's happening with our financial situation, who knows what to believe. This is what I can tell you. I invest in precious metals. All right. That's what I invest in, and people are like, well, what about cryptocurrency? What about foreign currency? I don't invest in those things because I invest in things that I know that have a proven track record. Thank you. They have value to it. Exactly. That's why I invest in those things. And I don't invest in those as like a long-term investment. I use those as like an insurance type of thing, in the interim itself. Gold backs. That's a relatively new commodity, which I think is smart because, if the shit hits the fan, are you going to be able to go take a silver coin that might be worth $3,000 or $4,000, a 1 ounce a gold eagle? Who's going to exchange that for and give you change for it? Nobody's going to do that.
Dollars, paper.
You got to learn. I think we're going to be in the bartering thing too. People, probably should skill up on their bartering skills a little bit as well, and learn how to negotiate. And so I think that would be a great thing to go back to. Yeah.
Junk silver is always good. They call it junk silver. It means it's just a fraction of.
Make sure you get 90%. Yeah. Make sure you get the 90% junk silver.
90%.
So prior, I think it's previous 1964, 63 is 90% on that. That's always a good thing. But again, bartering, I love it, because I've always been preparedness mind. I've always been a survivalist. My previous life, I've been into survival and things of that nature anyways. And so here's something that's interesting. Most people are addicted to some form of sugar. Okay. So having like honey or sugar on hand to barter with, I guarantee you, people will barter for a cup or two of sugar if they need to for something substantial. Cigarettes is another thing. I've seen people dry pack can cigarettes because people will barter for a cigarette if they, to get that fix, things of that nature too. Alcohol is the same thing. You can barter with alcohol. You can use alcohol, for certain remedies and stuff like that too, especially if you're into holistic tinctures. There's just a lot of things that we can do. But like I said, I hate saying it, but I just feel,
I would rather feel foolish later that we don't need it than not mention it. And you know what? Yes. We love everyone too much to not say something.
Correct.
And if you're feeling panicked, don't feel panicked. Go to the store, buy a pound of rice, buy 2 pounds of rice. Rice goes a very long way and it cooks quite easily. Water, water, water. One of the things that I do, and I know this is just the, thrifty person in me, when I'm finished with the Asea bottles, they get filled with either filtered water or tap water, and I write it on the bottle, whether it's tap or filtered, and I just put the date. So I already have the container. I already know it's an awesome container, and I love the product. But, here's the deal. I get to reuse this container, and it's amazing. Just saying,
there you go.
You can store water.
There you go. Yeah, where there's a will, there's a way, right? Where there's a will, there's a way. You just have to, be innovative and think outside the box sometimes. Here's some counsel for people that live in the city. If you're on the city septic water system, and this is a fact, if you live in the city, and the farther you live from the water system, especially if you live downhill, it's not a good place for you. So why I'm saying that is literally the term shit rolling downhill is literal. So in a water system in a city, if you live the farthest point away from that watering system, what happens is if the power goes out, those auxiliary generators only last for so many hours or days. Right. They run out. Right. What happens is backflow takes place. So all that raw sewage backflows and it goes to the farthest point. And if you're downhill, because most of your city's septic systems are built on a slope anyways, natural gravity. That's the way it's designed and engineered. So if you live in like a subdivision or something like that, and you're at that point, there's ways that you can actually preserve your house, because what will happen is when that raw sewage starts backflowing down through the septic systems into those streets, it'll come up through your homes, it'll come up through your sinks, it'll come up through your toilets, everything. Your house will become a biohazard zone at that point. It's uninhabitable. But there's ways that you can protect your house by blocking and stuffing things in the sink drainage, in your toilet, in your your bathtub, so that way it bypasses That's right. It'll bypass you and it'll go to somebody else itself. They have bypass valves that you can install, and you can have plumbers install these bypass valves in your home's septic system. So you just flip the switch and it bypasses you and it'll go to somebody else. So you don't have to worry about the backflow hitting you. Just, people don't think about that, but it's a realistic situation.
Absolutely. I'm on my own septic here.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot of information.
We could talk
It's
for
really gonna hit the
days
phone
on preparedness. Trust me.
We can go
We
for
went from
hours.
one
I
end of the
love
spectrum to the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did. The Krysted energy to backed up crap. Awesome.
There you go.
Holy.
It's just a shit show, right?
I love our conversations. We have so much fun.
Pardon?
Yeah.
I said we have so much fun.
We do. And
We
we've got
love
to.
having you on here, ML.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. I enjoy being here with you ladies.
We love
been
having
wonderful.
you, and we just want to kind of appreciate you. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we kind of close for today? And because there's been a lot of information that's come about.
Yeah. No, I like I'm telling people, make sure, be very careful where you're getting your information from. I know this last week, there's been a lot of chatter out there previous to Memorial Day weekend where certain things were supposed to happen. They didn't happen again. Be really careful who you are getting and driving your information from about what's about to happen, because you know what? Here's something that's just a fact. As from an operational mindset, if there is an operation that is planned, that is being staged, they are not going to go out there and broadcast that to the truther community and let you guys know dates, times, how it's going to happen, and da-da-da. That's not how that's going to happen, guys. It's just not how operations are conducted. It's never been that way. They've always kept the element of surprise at hand itself. Now, that being said, they could share disinformation to vet out disinformation operatives. That happens all the time.
Yeah.
But when people are telling you, hey, something's going to happen on this day at this time, and the EBS is going to go off and all this stuff's going to happen, it's going to happen if it happens, when it happens, and you're not going to get forewarned about it, because why would we broadcast and signal to our enemies that we're about ready to do something?
Exactly.
We got to have to use some little common sense here, guys. A little bit of common sense goes a long ways, because Mark Twain said, common sense ain't so common.
Nope.
Yeah. So that's all I have for now, Divine Ones.
Thank you. We really love and appreciate you, Amel, and we'd love to have you back again. And
I love you
very
too.
soon. Thank you.
Where can everyone find you?
Well,
Yeah.
For right now, you can find me at the Sovereign Redneck Renegade on Telegram. I don't do really any shows on YouTube anymore because I'm tired of being censored by the censor Nazis. So I primarily just do content on Telegram itself. I'm hoping to launch our Ascension Academia channel that'll be at the Gnostic Network here in the next couple of weeks itself. And just forewarning, I honestly am just letting you guys know, probably in a short order, I may go dark for a little bit. Just what needs to take place and needs to happen. I'm not trying to be ominous about anything. I'm just saying there's a real viable reason why certain things need to be shut down for a little bit. And so I will let people know before I do that. But there you go.
Awesome.
Thank you for asking.
We love and appreciate you. We want you to be obviously in the highest and the highest and highest vibrations always. And just love everything, as you do, living in that loving light. And that's what it's about.
It absolutely is. Thank you
Oh.
so much, ladies. Have a blessed
you.
evening.
Thank you, ML. We
Thank you
appreciate
so
you.
much.
Thank
Come
you,
on
Diane.
whenever you want.
Thank you.
And
You're
we will
welcome.
speak with you soon.
All right.
All right.
Have a blessed evening.
Thank you, everybody. God bless.